Hello everybody, and welcome to another Psdtuts Plus video tutorial. My name is Steven, and today we are going to be creating this underwater composition image. It is built up of the 4 images, one being the background, and 3 being the sharks, the turtle, and the coral in this right side here. So let's start off by opening our background image in Photoshop. And right away I'm going to go to Image, Image Size, and make the width 630 pixels. I'm going to expand this so we can see it better and zoom in. And when you have that, you can double click the background layer and click OK to unlock it. And then I'm going to drag it downwards, just straight down till the rocks down here are about to the bottom of the document. And then create a layer mask and make sure black and white are your foreground and background color, and select the top portion just to the bottom of the bubbles here, and Alt and backspace to hide it. Then click on this thumbnail, and we can zoom in a bit, and select the top portion of the image, just this little square, and we are going to copy it and paste it to a new layer, and Command T or Control T if you're on a PC to scale it upwards. Now don't worry about the water looking a little bit stretched. That will look alright in the end. We're going to go to about halfway, and then we're going to duplicate it again by holding down Alt and Shift and just dragging straight up. Now you can create a mask on here on your top layer and grab your paintbrush tool. Make sure your hardness is all the way down so it has a nice soft effect, and I'm just going to paint and get rid of the hard edge here. And I'm going to do the exact same thing with the first layer that we duplicated, and it's kind of hard to see, but I believe it's right about here. Alright, that looks good. And when you have that, we can go ahead and just name this real quick to BG, then BG1, BG2, and we'll throw that into its own group by Command G, and we'll name the group background image. So when you have that, you can go ahead and drag in your shark image. It's a little bit big here. I'm just going to drag and drop it right here. And then zoom out, and again Control T, and I'm just going to scale this down to a good size. Something like that. That'll be fine. And then I'm going to zoom in and just do a quick selection around the shark. Just something like this. And then I am going to click on the mask tool just so it removes everything outside of that selection. Then zoom in and grab your brush tool. You're going to want something kind of small, and I'm using a tablet, but you can use your mouse. For the sake of time, I went ahead and sped up the clip. There really isn't any reason for you to watch this at normal speed. All I'm doing is going around with the paintbrush tool and erasing the background. Now a better way to do this would probably be to use the pen tool and make a selection around the shark and then feather the edges. But that's alright. I enjoy using my tablet, and this gets the job done. If you accidentally draw too much onto the shark and you erase part of his body, all you have to do is switch to white and just paint over it. Okay, so once that is done, you can change this to overlay. You can see what that's looking like, and we'll name this overlay. And then we can duplicate this and go to Image, Adjustments, and Desaturate, and that's going to turn to black and white. If I bring this back to normal, you can see what I'm talking about. So I'm going to switch that over to Hard Light, and then I'm going to duplicate it again. Let's name this Hard Light. And this layer I'm going to make it normal and bring down the opacity to about 60% or so. And as you can see, when I did that, you can see there's a little bit of jaggedy lines over here that I missed. So I'm just going to go over and paint over that quickly with the mask. And then once you did that, you need to throw it back onto these 2 layers. So by holding down Alt and clicking and dragging that layer mask, you can click Replace, and I'll do the same for the last one. Alright, so that's looking good. So let's go ahead and group that, and we're going to name this shark, and then we can close up our large shark image and load in the turtle. Alright, so let's drag and drop that in. It's really big, so I'm going to zoom out and scale it in. And then I'm going to flip it horizontally so it's swimming from the left to the right. I'm going to scale it down a bit more, something like that, and I'm going to rotate it and then just place it over to about right here. That looks good. And now let's work on the background a little bit. You can hide this turtle layer, and I'm going to create a new layer above the image background, and I'm going to fill it with black by doing Command Backspace. And then I'm going to grab the eraser tool and hardness set to 0, and I'm going to make this a really big brush, something like that. And I'm just going to click, and it's going to erase some. And then I'm going to make a new layer again, fill that with black, and do the same thing, but this time from the left side. Maybe something like that. Alright, so now we're going to change this first layer to about 80% opacity. This one you can mess with depending on what you like. And the second one we're going to lower it down to about, I don't know, 65%. And that's pretty dark, so I'm going to erase some more from this top corner. And that looks good. Alright, so now we can unhide our turtle layer again, and we're going to do the same thing with the masking. And I'm going to grab my paintbrush tool with black as my foreground color, and I'm just going to erase this background again. And over here on the left side, I'm just going to quickly smooth out this area here, just so some of the coral still remains. So it gives some extra depth to this picture. And then I'm just going to stop at the beginning of his fin. And then now from here on out, I'm just going to erase the entire background. Once again, I sped up this clip because I'm doing the exact same thing that I did with the shark. All I'm doing is going around the turtle with my black paintbrush and erasing the unwanted background. Now the reason I use a mask is because if I accidentally go over the turtle's shell or something, all I have to do is switch to white and draw over it. So once you have the entire background erased, you can go ahead and change this layer mode to overlay, and we're going to lower the opacity to about 60%, just so it's not so bright. And then I'm going to duplicate it and go to Image, Adjustments, and I'm going to desaturate it again. And this time I'm going to set it to Hard Light. And then I'm going to go back to the layer mask, and I'm just going to brush a little bit on the bottom just to give it some light and dark areas. So when you have that done, we can grab this shark layer, and we're going to duplicate it, and we're going to just scale it down just to give it an extra shark in the background here. Rotate it, and then we can drag it out a little bit and lower the opacity to give it some depth, something like that. And let's duplicate it again, flip it horizontal, rotate it upwards a bit, and maybe somewhere over here, something like that. And then again, I'm just going to lower the opacity just a little bit so it's off in the distance. And now we don't want to neglect the top of this too much, so let's grab both of these sharks, and I'm just going to drag them up just a little bit. This one a little bit more, and that's looking good. So now let's grab our coral, and I'm going to drag it into here. And don't worry about the size, I'm going to scale it down, flip it horizontal, scale it down quite a bit more, and just throw it into place over here. We're going to right click it and go to rasterize the layer, and then again grab your mask tool and just going to quickly mask out the background. And one thing you want to do is make sure you get rid of these hard edges on the bottom so it blends better with the background. And You can erase part of it so it blends in, and then just go to town on the background. With this one, I'm just doing a quick erase of the background because with the opacity set low, you won't be able to see the details. Okay, so when you think you're done, you can go ahead and switch it to overlay, and we're going to lower the opacity way down to about 40% or so. Zoom out, and you can see that blends in very nicely. This top looks a little bit bright, so I'm just going to erase around that, and that looks nice. So let's add one more turtle. Let's group this together and name this turtle. Let's spell it correctly, and then I'm just going to drag it upwards up to here. I'm going to grab the mask tool, going to mask it on, add a mask to there, and I'm just going to erase this coral just around his fins here. So when you have that, let's scale it downwards so it looks different, and I'm going to rotate him a bit and drag him out to over here. And I can see some of the coral poking in on the bottom left, so I'm going to erase that, and then we are going to lower the opacity some. Alright, let's create some bubbles, some air bubbles. So above everything, I'm going to create a new layer and right click and load in our bubble brushes. Mine's already loaded in. If yours isn't, you can click this arrow and go to your preset manager and make sure on brushes and load the bubble brushes. So I'm going to choose this one, which is a single bubble, and then I'm going to change the size to about 6 pixels, and then go over to window and brush, and we're going to modify the brushes just a little bit. So come down here and let's change the spacing to 210%. Okay. And then shape dynamics, I'm going to have it on pen pressure because I am using a tablet, but you can use your mouse, it doesn't really matter too much. And I'm going to change the size jitter to 30%. The minimum diameter, I'm going to change that to 10%, and then the angle jitter is going to be 10% as well, and the roundness is going to be 20, and then the minimum roundness is going to be 25. I'm going to go over to scatter, and I'm going to have the scatter to 1000, the count to 1, and the count jitter to 18. So let's zoom in here, and I'm going to paint. Make sure your opacity on the top here is set to 100, and I'm just going to paint in some bubbles by their mouths and also on the gills. And you can mess with the different sizes just to give some variation to the bubbles all around. And I'm just using that by my left and right bracket to change the size of my brush. So I'm going to throw some bubbles in the background there, and you can create a new layer so we can have different opacities on these, and then just fill it with bubbles. The more that you have, I find it looks the cooler. So I'm going to lower the opacity on this top layer, and this one I'm going to lower as well, just so they blend in better. Another thing I want to do is on this shark, the first shark that we made, I'm going to lower the opacity just a little bit so he blends in and isn't so bright. And then we can zoom out, and let's name these bubble and bubble 2, and then we can group that together. And then I'm going to create a new layer, and I'm going to grab a normal brush, something like this. I'm going to make the size a bit bigger, something mid-size. I am using about 35 pixels here, hardness all the way down, and I'm going to just brush out some streaks. It doesn't have to be perfect. These are just going to be like sun rays coming through the water, something like that. And then I'm going to go to filter, noise, and add a little bit of noise, and I'm going to have it on 16%, uniform and monochromatic. Click OK, and then I'm going to go to filter, blur, and Gaussian blur, and I'm going to change this blur to 22%. click OK, and let's bring that opacity way down, something about, I don't know, 30 or 32%. Let's go with 32%, and then I'm going to add a mask with black as my foreground, and I'm just going to lighten up these areas just so it's not so bright everywhere. Something like that. And I'm going to lower the opacity just a little bit more because it looks a little too bright. And that's all that there is to it. I would like to thank you for watching, and be sure to check out psd.tutsplus.com for more great tutorials and a lot of other Photoshop content. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.